All right, I guess we'll go ahead and get started. And Bryce, can you tell me if there's some news in the Slack first? Because I can't see it.
Yeah, I'll keep an eye on it.
Great. All right, everyone. Welcome to the Rubin Research Bytes Cosmology session. Sorry about the 15-minute delay, but it's mostly sorted. So I'm one of your chairs, Kara Ponder. I'll be sharing my screen, going through the slides, and Bryce Kalmbach will be in charge of the Slack, looking for your messages. You can also send messages on the Zoom chat, but it's probably easier to keep track of messages on the Slack once the session is over. Up to you. We ask that everyone please go ahead and mute themselves if they're not already muted. And then for the Q&A session, Bryce will let you know if you can unmute to ask your question or what's going forward there. For the agenda, we have 4 talks lined up, and they'll each be 3 minutes in quick succession. So we will not do Q&A in between each of them, and we'll have a 10-minute question and answer session at the end of it. Real quick, we'll go over, so they're friendly reminders. By coming to this meeting, you've agreed to abide by the code of conduct at the registration, and that includes adhering to principles of kindness, trust, respect, diversity, and inclusion in order to provide a learning environment that produces rigor and excellence. Any discriminatory behavior will not be tolerated, and that's against all of the protected people such as gender, gender identity, race, ethnic background, national origin, religion, political affiliation, age, marital status, sexual orientation, disabilities, or any other reason. And that if you witness any form of bullying, harassment, or aggression, you will report it per the instructions in the code of conduct. So a few more reminders. These talks are being recorded. We are still recording this session, even though it's on a different Zoom. The videos are supposed to be posted the next day. We'll see with this. And again, all questions should be asked through Slack or the Zoom channel. And if we're running low on time, Slack questions with the most thumbs up will have slight priority. And feel free to show your appreciation through applauses on Zoom or on Slack, but not here. All of the presentation material is on the session page, and I tried to post I posted the link to the slide deck on the Slack page as well. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with our first talk by Erfan on emulating galaxy-galaxy blending and LSST for 3x2-point analysis.
Sure. So the goal of this study is to examine the effects of galaxy-galaxy blending in the final cosmology we infer from extragalactic catalogs. In order to do that, we need a so-called truth catalog, which has all the true values such as redshift, magnitude, right ascension, declination, and since we are going to carry out a clustering plus weak lensing analysis, it has to be big enough. We then need to emulate blending in this truth catalog or mock catalog to get a second catalog for comparison. Here we use an M-body simulation called Brossard, which covers a quarter of the sky per realization, and we then generate LSST-like magnitudes with errors. You can see a histogram of the LSST IMAG on this slide. And then we convolve all the galaxy shapes with a typical uniform PSF for LSST and add noise to them given this signal-to-noise ratio that we have. And of course, we are going to emulate blending on top of all these effects. Please, next slide. The way we emulate blending is first by identifying close pairs of galaxies using an FOF algorithm, friends of friends algorithm. We then create image cutouts for those crowded regions by using Gaussian, then run a source detection algorithm on it, and based on that, we put our galaxies into 3 categories, like unrecognized blend, a recognized blend, and isolated. So you can see an example cutout on the right with the proper labels, a histogram of the group size after emulation, and the separation angle for And the histogram for the separation angle for unrecognized blends is also shown here. Now that we have blended version of our mock catalog, please next slide. We can do our tomographic binning for each of the catalogs. You can see our DNDZ based on true redshifts for the non-blended catalog on the right. And then we measure clustering and weak lensing correlation functions, also known as 3x2 point for both catalogs. I didn't have enough room to show all my plots, but you can see a picture of our 3x2 point covariance matrix here, which will be used along with the correlation that we got to infer cosmology for both the non-blended and blended samples. Okay, that's it.
Great, thank you. And that was under time, perfect. So we will move on to our next talk on using machine learning to refine photometric redshifts for a platinum sample by Adam Broussard.
Hi, so I am a graduate student at Rutgers University, and I'm working with Professor Eric Geweiser. And as Kara mentioned, the goal of this project is basically to improve photometric redshifts and to refine a photometric redshift sample to produce what we call the platinum sample. So in order to do this, or rather the motivation for this is kind of with large scale structure measurements, which require placing galaxies into redshift bins. And interlopers between redshift bins can be a major source of contamination. So it's important to have these accurate photometric redshifts. So in order to perform this analysis, what I'm going to show you is we do kind of a two-step approach using data from the HyperSupremeCam Public Data Release 2, or PDR2, which is an LSST precursor data set. And first, we basically look at the full sample of galaxies that have spectroscopic redshifts available to see how our method performs. And then we split it into the bright sample and the dim sample to see how this can extrapolate to to dimmer galaxies, I should say. You can go ahead and advance. So on this slide, this shows some of our results for the full sample of galaxies that have spectroscopic redshifts. So the left panel, or the left plot, is Z spec on the x-axis versus Z phot on the y-axis. It's a pretty standard photometric redshift plot where the one-to-one line is pretty clearly shown. The next plot to the right of that is the first step of our pipeline, where we apply a neural network regressor that tries to fit for the error in the previous plot. So you can see that it's actually taken some of the outliers and kind of squished them down towards the center one-to-one line, which is a good improvement to start with. And then finally, the third plot shows what the effects after we have tried to select for galaxies with delta Z over 1 plus Z of less than 0.02. So these are the very accurate photometric redshifts, or at least what we can select for using a neural network. And you can see this is a major improvement. So we cut down the sample size by 3, but we have a really nice sample here, and it's compared to a simple cut on uncertainty reported by the PhotoZ code on the right. So it's a major improvement over a simple uncertainty cut with similar numbers. And you can go ahead and advance. All right, so this last slide shows the same thing, but now this is for that split case. And so I've trained on the bright sample of galaxies, and this is what's shown for the dim. What's shown here is only the dim galaxies. This is the worst case scenario. And the big takeaway here is if you look at the last two plots, the one on the left is, of course, our classifier version, and it has reduced the population of galaxies by a factor of 3, but has significantly more numbers and better statistics than the simple uncertainty cut on the right. So I'd be very interested in talking about this with anyone who researches photometric redshifts. Feel free to reach out to me by email or on Slack.
All right, great, right on time. And our next speaker, again, photometric redshifts with Gaussian mixture models by Peter Hatfield. Peter, is your sound on?
Vital thing there to do. Sorry.
Perfect.
My name is Peter. I'm a postdoc in Oxford, and this is some of the work on photometric redshifts me and some of the people in Oxford have been doing last year or so. And I think it kind of covers some of the similar sort of issues of the previous talk of how to kind of cope with machine learning based photometric redshift predictions in the kind of extrapolative regime when the test data and the training data are have different color magnitude differences. So we kind of constructed, again, two samples of training and test data, both of which had spectroscopic redshifts, but had very different color and redshift distributions. You can kind of see the kind of fields there of Cosmos and XMN, LSSS, and on the right kind of shows the kind of ratio of the density and color space between the two samples, and on the bottom right, the different redshift distributions. So our XMM LSS sample had a much thicker kind of tail to high redshifts. So we kind of tried to see how we could kind of modify our pre-existing machine learning code, GPZ, to see if we could do better at the higher redshifts without compromising at lower redshifts where there was more data. Next slide, please. And this plot kind of basically shows kind of a large number of kind of different weighting schemes that kind of tried to incorporate our knowledge of these two different color distributions into the training process. Basically, sort of lots of variants on the concept of upweighting, parts of color space that are common in the test data but rare in the training data, and kind of various variants on that. We basically concluded that the best way was to, the kind of most important method was to make the validation data look more like the test data, and also to, before you do the training, split the color magnitude space up into various subsections and train each bit independently. These plots show the bias in redshift as a function of spectroscopic and photometric redshift, and then the two plots on the right show the bias improvement. And then final slide. And then this just kind of shows the improvement we got. So top left was kind of a sort of naive training process, and kind of see that you do quite badly for that high redshift tail. And the top right shows that you can get a moderate improvement on that if you kind of take the differences in the color magnitude distributions into account. Of course, for some of them, even with this kind of correction, you're still going to be extrapolating, so you can combine it with template fitting. Template fitting is the bottom left, and on the right is if you do the combination, you get an overall improved version.
Great, thank you. So that was all of our speakers, and we can open it up to Q&A now.
Yeah, so remember, if you have questions, put them in the Slack chat or on the Zoom chat. I don't see any. Oh, we have a question from Surhood. You can go ahead and unmute and ask your question.
Yeah, this question is for Erfan. Are you planning to run this kind of blending analysis on the DC2 simulations?
So I'm running it on a mock catalog, but because I need like a large area of the sky, so if you mean the image simulation, DC2 image simulations, for now I don't have any plan because basically the area that is covered wasn't enough for me, because I needed some statistics because I'm doing the weak lensing analysis. For that reason, not yet. I didn't do anything based on that yet. And didn't
I see.
plan.
So DC2 sims are not good enough, you're saying, for the
They are not big enough. I mean, the image
Okay.
simulation is not big enough. It's just like a small part of the sky. But
Okay,
this simulation
thanks.
covers a quarter of the sky per realization.
Yep. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
So go ahead and put your questions in the chats if you have them. We have a few more minutes for questions. Oh, another question. Go ahead.
Yeah, I may ask another one then. So this is for Adam. So the second step that was run, can you go to slide 8? Yeah, so this second step that was done, so regression for fit error using a neural network. So there, did you reserve some sample for this kind of analysis, or you ran it on the whole sample to see how well the sigma improvement and this NMAD improvement happens?
So this is run on the entire sample, but it uses 5-fold cross-validation. So the predictions that are made for any given object are, that object is not in the training sample for the neural network that makes the particular prediction, because it's because I've split it 5 ways. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah. I think I understand roughly what you're trying to say. But then when you go to a fainter sample, so that's what is shown on slide 9, I suppose.
Right.
Okay, so there you're only training on the brighter galaxies, and then.
Exactly. So yeah, here we train on the brighter galaxies, and now we are only plotting the dimmer galaxies, which is why this is a worst case scenario, essentially. So this is, we're trying to see with an extrapolation of maybe a magnitude or so, how reliable are our methods.
Yeah, but no, I just wanted to understand. So this regression and so on, that is done in the magnitude space, magnitude and color space, or it's done in this delta Z space? I didn't understand that.
So the features that are passed in are the same features that we give to the PhotoZ code, which is TPZ, or trees for PhotoZ. And that is actually I should say it's minus some of the magnitude. So we essentially give the neural network one magnitude, all of the consecutive colors like G minus R, R minus I, that kind of thing. And then we actually have another feature that we add in that we've been experimenting with to see how well it adds information, which is what we call band triplets, which are differences of 2 consecutive colors, like G minus R minus I, which kind of acts like a second derivative, because a color tends to measure slope, and so this kind of measures peakiness. So those are the features that get passed into something like the neural network regressor here.
Okay,
along with the outputs of TPZ.
But then you are giving some kind of a cost function which is trying to minimize these things. Is it the sigma and NMAD? Is that?
Yeah, so that's just the no, it's the it's regressing for the sigma, or not the sigma, the delta Z itself. So the difference between the photo Z and the spectroscopic redshift.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
Using mean squared error.
Still have a few more minutes if other people have questions.
So everyone was on time, which is good. Let me know if my clicking through, I realized that I didn't click through once for Erfan. I just want to make sure everyone's fine without Wint. Great. I take silences. Being happy.
I nodded, it's hard to see though.
All right, I'll give everyone one more minute just in case. All right. I guess we will go ahead and get started. So, sorry, there's people coming in right now. All right. So welcome to the second half of the Rubin Research Bytes for the Cosmology session. I'm Kara Ponder. I'll be sharing my screen and flipping the slides forward. And Bryce Kalmbach is your other host, and he will be dealing with the Q&A. And here's a link of the Slack channel. So please post any questions that you have to the Slack channel. You can also post them in Zoom, but it might be a little bit harder to keep track of those. So I would suggest the Slack channel. And so for the agenda, we won't go through over as much introduction as the first session, but we'll have 4 flash talks, each at 3 minutes. And we'll be going straight through those with no stopping for question and answer in between. And then once they're all done, we will spend approximately 10 minutes on question and answer for everybody. And we ask that everyone please go ahead and mute yourselves so we don't have any noise coming through. Yep. So, right, friendly reminders, you already heard, you agreed to the code of conduct. I won't go over this again. And reminders that this workshop will be recorded. So if you do not wish to be recorded, please keep your camera off. And video is supposed to be posted soon. And please do put questions on the Slack channel. Questions with thumbs up will be given a priority. And you'll see I posted a link to the slide deck in the Slack channel as well. All right, so let's go ahead and start with our first speaker, talking about emulating galaxy-galaxy blending in LSST by Erfan.
All right, the goal of this study is to examine the effects of galaxy-galaxy blending in the final cosmology that we infer from extragalactic catalogs. As you can see in the image on the left, 2 individual galaxies that can be separated in the HST image on the right panel are seen as a single object in this Subaru image on the left panel of this image. This is what we call an unrecognized blend. So in order to do what we just said, we need a so-called truth catalog, which has all the true values such as redshift, magnitude, and so on. And since we are going to carry out a clustering plus weak lensing analysis, it has to be big enough for our study. We then need to emulate blending in this truth catalog or mock catalog to get a second catalog for comparison. Here we use an M-body simulation called Brossard, which covers a quarter of the sky per realization. We generate LSST-like magnitudes with errors. You can see a histogram of our LSST IMAG on this slide. And then we convolve all the galaxy shapes with a typical uniform PSF and add noise to them given the signal to noise ratio. And of course, we are going to emulate blending on top of all these effects that I just mentioned. Please next slide. All right. So the way we emulate blending is first by identifying close pairs of galaxies using an FOF algorithm. We then create image cutouts for those crowded regions by using GalSim, run a source detection algorithm on it, and based on that, we put our galaxies into 3 categories: unrecognized blend, recognized blend, and isolated. You can see an example cutout of the on the right with the proper labels. A histogram of the group size after emulation and also a histogram of the separation angle for unrecognized blends are also shown. Now that we have a blended version of our catalog, please next slide. We can do our tomographic binning for each of the catalogs. You can see our DNDZ based on true redshifts for the non-blended catalog on the right. And then we measure clustering and weak lensing correlation functions, also known as 3x2 point, for both catalogs. I didn't have enough room again to put a lot of plots that I had, but I thought it would be useful to show the picture of our 3x2 point covariance matrix here, which will be used along with the correlations that we got to infer cosmology for both the non-blended and the blended samples. That's it.
Great, thank you. So our next talk will be using machine learning to refine photometric redshifts for a platinum sample by Adam Broussard.
Great, thank you very much. My name is Adam Broussard. I am a 5th-year graduate student at Rutgers University working with Professor Eric Gauweiser. And we're working on a project that aims to improve photometric redshifts and eventually select galaxies that have the most accurate redshifts for use in a platinum sample for large-scale structure measurements. Large-scale structure is kind of the driving project behind this work because it requires you to assign galaxies to tomographic bins, to redshift bins, and interlopers between bins can be a major source of contamination. So in order to perform this analysis, we use Subaru Hyper Supreme Cam Public Data Release 2 or PDR2 data as an LSST precursor data set. And we do a 2-step analysis where we essentially start by looking at galaxies that, the sample of galaxies that have spectroscopic redshifts and how well our analysis performs on that sample. And then we split it into the bright half and the dim half, and we train on the bright half to see what how well this extrapolates to lower magnitudes or to lower brightnesses. Go ahead. All right, so this plot on the left shows our original fits to all 300,000 galaxies in PDR2 using Trees for PhotoZ or TPZ as our PhotoZ code. The next plot on the right shows the first step of our pipeline, which is a neural network regressor that attempts to regress for the error in the original PhotoZ fit. So you can see that it has shifted the distribution a bit more towards the center. And then finally, the third plot shows the results after we apply the second step of our pipeline, which is a neural network classifier. And it tries to select for galaxies that have delta Z over 1 plus Z of less than 0.02. So these are our very accurate PhotoZs. And you can see it reduces the sample size by about a factor of 3, but when compared to a simple uncertainty cut, which is the far right plot, it actually has significantly better statistics in sigma and nmad. All right, you can go ahead to the next slide. All right, so this is the second step of our 2-step process where we train on the bright sample of galaxies and then we test on the dim sample. So in all of these plots here, I only plot the dim sample of galaxies. And you can see that the dim sample is about 90,000 and it has significantly more noise in it. But the big takeaway is to look at the far right 2 plots, which shows our classifier version on the left and the uncertainty cut on the right. And here we actually see a significant improvement in the noise from the original fit, but also our classifier sample has 3 times the numbers of the uncertainty selected sample and much better statistics in the nmad and sigma. So we have some really promising results so far, and I would really look forward to speaking about this with anyone who studies PhotoZs. So contact me by email or on Slack. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And now we have photometric redshifts with Gaussian mixture models by Peter Hatfield.
Hi, my name is Peter. I'm a postdoc at the University of Oxford, and this is some work of photometric redshifts I've done with my collaborators at Oxford over the last year or two. And some of this research kind of covers similar issues to Adam's talk, trying to understand if you can correct your photometric redshift machine learning predictions, if you can incorporate somehow your knowledge of the different color magnitude distribution of the test set compared with the training data. So we used sample data where we knew the spectroscopic redshift for both the training and test data across all the bands, but then deliberately constructed them to kind of have very different color magnitude differences, which you can see in the top right, weighted by the difference, and very different redshift distributions in the bottom right. You can kind of see that our kind of constructed test data has quite a large tail to higher redshifts, and we're just trying to see if we can basically use this knowledge to squeeze a little bit of extra performance at high redshift out of the training process. Can I have the next slide, please? So these kind of plots show the improvements we were able to get. The left-hand column shows the bias as a function of redshift, and the column shows the kind of improvements. And this is basically experimenting with kind of a large range of different sort of weighting mechanisms that try and upweight the parts of parameter space that are underrepresented in the training data, but strongly represented in the test data and so on. And we eventually concluded that the best method was to try and weigh your sampling of the test data to construct the validation data to make it look like the test data, and also to run the kind of training process separately on different kind of subpopulations based on the color space, and to kind of train all of them separately and then kind of piece it together. And then if we go to the final slide. So the kind of top left plot there shows the kind of sort of naive training on the whole sample. The top right kind of shows the kind of improvement we were able to get if you also take into account the differences in the color magnitude space. So you can get some, you still don't get them all right, but you can get some improvement at higher redshift. And then for the ones where you're really extrapolating, you should probably kind of then regress to the kind of template best methods. So the bottom left plot shows the template based photo Z, and the bottom right kind of shows a kind of combined method where you use our kind of improved machine learning based prediction in the kind of interpolative regime, and then you kind of smoothly go to template based when you're kind of far away from any training data in the extrapolative regime. Thank you very much.
And thanks to all of our speakers. And we'll move on to the question and answer session part of the session. Bryce?
Yeah, so we have a question in the Slack chat from Eric Gaussian. Eric, you want to go ahead and ask your question?
Sure. I was asking Peter, I really enjoyed all the talks, and in your last slide, it was nice to see the improvements that come across. And then if I understood correctly, the lower right panel used GPZ to do this combined analysis of templates and machine learning photo Zs. It's definitely better, but there's still this systematic at the lower right at true redshift between 2 and 4. I'm wondering if you know what causes that and how it might be fixable.
Yeah, we haven't identified that that's one specific population of AGN or something that needs to be separated out in the thing. We've looked at a few things. I think that's mainly going to be, to my knowledge, the kind of highly bimodal PDFs. So the template fitting is giving the can kind of capture that moderately well, but then the combined method basically mainly focuses on the point estimates. So I think that's probably the bimodal ones there, not showing up when we plot it with just the single point, basically. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think you're talking about like the degeneracy between Lyman break and
yes, sorry, yeah, it's basic. They're the degenerate ones, and kind of by plotting the point estimate, those ones look bad. If you do it with the kind of QQ plots, it looks okay for those redshifts. It's still not perfect, but
thank you.
Yeah, so please put your questions in the Slack chat, or if something just comes to you, you can use the raise hand feature on Zoom. That worked last time as well. All right, last call for any questions. All right, I want to thank our speakers one more time for doing a great job, and thank you all for attending. And there will be a recording later, and you can continue to ask questions in the Slack channel if they come up, and I'm sure our speakers will be happy to get back to you. So enjoy your break, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Bryce and Kara.
Thank you.